Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. Glad to have you. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel. And on my channel, we dig into the psychology behind writing. So we're going to talk about why people do the things they do, why your characters act the way they do. Because in my mind, that's how you make a much more well-rounded world. So today we are continuing with one of my favorite series that I've started, and that is my trope diagnosis series. So this is where we take a trope and we dig into the psychology behind it. So this month I've been focusing on some of my favorite tropes. They aren't all necessarily on my top 10 tropes video, but these are tropes I think need to be talked about. So for today, this is one I actually almost forgot about, even though every time it shows up, I love it. And that is screw the rules, I'm doing what's right. Okay, so first off, what is this trope? This is essentially where your main character decides that regardless of what laws say, they're going to directly disobey them and do what they feel is right. Now, who are they disobeying? That varies by the story. In some cases, it is a family rule. In some cases, it is an actual legal set of laws. In some cases, it's religious laws. It's basically anyone that has some kind of authority can fulfill this trope. So some kind of law or rule has been put in place, and it directly contrasts with your main character's morality in some way, shape, or form. And most of the time, the character has kind of a conflict, and then they decide, screw it, I'm going to do what I think is right. Consequences be damned. And this one, I think, has a lot of room for potential that not everybody always digs into. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit. First off, I love this when it's used with a hero because it really gives you a sense of what their priorities are. Where do they stand on important issues? And the thing about morality is that it is a process. It is something that develops over time. There's a bunch of different theories on how we develop morality. Like a lot of things in psychology, we can't prove any of them, but we can look at evidence and see, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. So for the purposes of this video, I tend to follow Kohlberg's stages of morality, which is basically he believes that there were 3 essential levels of morality and there were 2 stages within each level. So those are, let's see, I believe it's pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. And then there were 2 stages within each one. So pre-conventional is when you're very, very young and you're first learning what right and wrong is. And in this stage, it's basically based off of your social models. So what do mom and dad say is right and wrong? That's what's right and wrong. When you enter into the second stage, it gets more into cause and effect. What causes me difficulty and what doesn't? And a lot of times this is also dictated by the laws of the land. So, stealing is wrong because the law says it's wrong. It's against the law, so it's wrong. And then you get into post-conventional. And this is where your morality comes from here, from inside, from what you think. Those other 2 stages, it's all influenced by external factors. So what does the law say? What do my parents say? What does cause and effect say? All factors that are acting on the person. When you enter post-conventional, that's when you start to get it from inside, from internal sources. So this is where you start to kind of decide, okay, well, I don't think this law is just because I think all people should be treated equally. That's one example. One that I've mentioned before in some of my other videos is the pharmacy question that they used in several experiments to determine what level of morality you were at. And that is the idea that An older man has a sick wife. There is a medicine available for her, but it's very expensive. The man can't afford it. He goes to the pharmacy and asks the pharmacist to either sell it to him at a lower price or work out some kind of deal with him. The pharmacist refuses, and so the man comes back later and steals the med for his wife. And the question is, was he wrong? And you'll get completely different answers depending on what level of morality you're in. So that's really what this trope centers on, is this idea of your characters essentially in post-conventional morality. They're no longer depending on external factors to determine what's right, what's wrong. They're making their own decisions. And that is usually, I notice this pops up a lot in young adult, which makes sense because that's usually when people are discovering their own morality and their own thoughts and their own beliefs on things. Within a story, this is usually done to kickstart the action. The character makes a decision, it kickstarts the action because now they have to deal with the consequences of that decision because they've made the choice to essentially break the laws of their land, and that always comes with consequences, and now they have to deal with it. And then a lot of times throughout the course of the story, the question is, was it worth it? So that's fun. But here's the aspect of it that I don't think people dig into a lot. And that is morality is completely subjective. So a lot of times when we think of this trope, we think about the character making a decision that's for the betterment of their world, the betterment of them, their family, etc., etc., etc. And that's usually what people do with it. But here's a kicker. What if what they believe to be moral is actually causing people pain and suffering? That technically still falls in this trope because the screw the rules, I'm doing what's right. What's right is completely in the viewpoint of your character. Let me give you guys an example. And I highly recommend this anime. If you have not seen it, go see it. I can't put any clips up on it in this video though, because its mother company gets kind of pissy about that. So, Death Note. If you haven't read it or seen it, go see it. Go read it. Essentially, the idea in Death Note is that a young man finds a notebook dropped by a death god, and at any name he writes in the notebook, the person dies, and he can determine how they die. So he decides what he's going to do is he is going to rid the world of all the bad people because, as he puts it, this world is rotten. And that is his driving force through the whole series, is he is fully convinced that what he's doing is the best thing to do. It is the moral thing to do. Even though he knows full well legally it's horrible, and legally he's committing murder. And so the whole point of the series is actually it presents this idea of what is justice, what is morality. So that's why I say if you haven't seen it, go see it. But I like that because it's not often you see a character with this trope that by all viewpoints is the bad guy. He's the protagonist, but he's not a good person. And so that is a ton of fun to explore because morality, and when you mix it with power, that gives you so many opportunities for drama, for psychological exploration, all kinds of stuff. Another good example of this is another anime called Monster, which I also recommend. And the idea behind this is that the surgeon is presented with two patients that come in. One is the mayor of the town, one is a child that has a bullet wound in his head. And he's told by his superiors to operate on the mayor. He makes the decision, no, I'm unfortunately going to have to let the mayor die. I'm going to operate on this child. I'm going to save this child. That's the decision he makes. And the child grows up to be a serial killer. And that's the whole point of the show, is him dealing with the aftermath of this. So in that case, it's kind of a you did the right thing, but at the wrong time kind of situation. So that's a fun angle too. And a lot of times anti-heroes fall into this trope, because this is where you get, they're not necessarily good, but they're not bad either, because their end result, what they're striving for, their goal is good. They have strong reasons for why they're doing this, and most of the time it is to help other people, but the methods that they're using, not so much. You could even make the argument, someone like Batman, he like rules this trope because the things he does are completely against the code of justice, code of ethics, but the reason he's doing them is to try and help his city, because the justice system is so corrupt, it's not going to do it. So this is a trope that makes you think. It's one that I like because you kind of have to put yourself in the character's shoes and kind of think, what would I do in this scenario? And that is an excellent way to get your audience to empathize with the character. If you can put them in a situation where they start to wonder, would I make the same decision? And if not, why wouldn't I make the same decision? Or I wouldn't make this decision, but I totally get why they did. Or, yeah, I'd make the same decision. Anytime you can get your audience to connect and put themselves in the character's shoes, you are establishing empathy. And that is how you keep people to care about your characters, even if they're doing horrible things. Like case in point, when I brought up Death Note earlier, Light is an extremely popular character, even though he's a horrible person. Because the series makes you give a shit about him. Even though he's doing these horrible things and he's completely justifying all these horrible things he's doing, they put you in this situation where you think about his justification for what he's doing, and while you see it's warped, you can also understand it. And that's how you get people to connect with your story. So I think this is a great trope for that. So thank you guys for chiming in and checking out my video. As always, if you guys have any comments or suggestions, leave them below. I always love to check them out. Make sure you subscribe if you like this kind of content so you never miss when I upload. I upload every Thursday and every Sunday. And I like to throw some extra videos in there if I can. So until next time, I hope you guys have a great one.